I'm sure you've heard the news. History. It's a record of our past, a testament to our triumphs and failures. But history is not a monolithic entity. It's not a single objective truth etched in stone. Instead, history is a tapestry woven from countless threads, each representing a unique perspective. Our understanding of the past is shaped by who we are, where we come from, and the stories we're told. Events that shake the world, reshape nations, and leave an indelible mark on the collective memory of humanity. The American Revolution, a beacon of liberty for some, might be seen as an act of rebellion by others. How we choose to remember and teach these events reveals a great deal about ourselves and our place in the world. Narratives are the stories we tell ourselves about the past. They provide context, meaning, and a sense of coherence to the often chaotic and complex tapestry of history. But narratives can also be used to shape perceptions, influence opinions, and even justify actions. Different cultures and nations often construct their own narratives around major historical events, highlighting certain aspects while downplaying others. Understanding these different perspectives is essential to developing a more nuanced and comprehensive understanding of the past. The American Revolution stands as a pivotal moment in world history. It marks the birth of a nation, the triumph of an idea, and the enduring legacy of a struggle for independence. In the United States, it is a story of courageous patriots fighting for freedom against a tyrannical British Empire. But across the Atlantic, in the land that once claimed the 13 colonies as its own, the narrative takes on a different hue. The American Revolution, or as it's often referred to in British history books, the American War of Independence, is viewed through a lens colored by distance, imperial ambitions, and a complex web of global conflicts. For Americans, the American Revolution is a cornerstone of national identity. It's a story deeply embedded in the national psyche, passed down through generations and celebrated with fervor every 4th of July. The story often begins with the cry of "No taxation without representation," a rallying call against what colonists perceived as unjust levies imposed by a distant and out-of-touch parliament. The narrative then unfolds through a series of iconic events: the Boston Tea Party, the battles of Lexington and Concord, and the Continental Army's improbable victory against all odds. A distant rebellion, the British view. In contrast to the central role the American Revolution occupies in American history, its place in the British historical narrative is decidedly more peripheral. The ongoing struggle with France for European dominance, the vastness of the British Empire, and internal political and economic upheavals often took precedence over a distant colonial rebellion. The colonists, once seen as loyal subjects, were now perceived by some as ungrateful rebels, challenging the authority of the crown and threatening the stability of the empire. The British narrative often emphasizes the economic benefits the colonies received as part of the empire, the protection afforded by the British military, and the perceived leniency of British rule compared to other European powers. Shifting sands of time. The passage of time, however, has softened the edges of these divergent narratives. Both nations have long since moved beyond the conflicts of the past, forging a close and enduring alliance. In contemporary British classrooms, the American Revolution is often taught as a complex and multifaceted event, acknowledging the legitimacy of colonial grievances while also exploring the imperial context and the global ramifications of the conflict. The focus is less on assigning blame or claiming victory, and more on understanding the forces that drove the revolution, the ideas it espoused, and its lasting impact on both sides of the Atlantic. A tale of two wars. Just a few decades after the American Revolution, the fledgling United States and Great Britain once again found themselves locked in a bitter conflict, the War of 1812. This war, often overshadowed by the epic scale and ideological battles of the American Revolution, offers a fascinating glimpse into how historical narratives can diverge dramatically depending on geographical and national perspectives. For Americans, it's a story of resilience, a second struggle for independence against a global superpower that sought to reassert its dominance. For Canadians, it's a defining moment in their national identity, a war that solidified their borders and fostered a sense of unity against a common threat. The Second War of Independence, an American perspective. In the United States, the War of 1812 is often framed as a second war of independence, a continuation of the struggle against British interference, and a testament to the young nation's determination to chart its own course. American textbooks often highlight key battles and figures that embody this spirit of defiance: the daring exploits of the USS Constitution, the heroic defense of Fort McHenry, and the decisive American victory at the Battle of New Orleans. A nation forged in defense, the Canadian experience. Across the border in Canada, the War of 1812 holds an even more significant place in the national consciousness. Canadian history books emphasize the courage and resourcefulness of their defense, a combined effort of British regulars, Canadian militia, and First Nations allies who repelled the American invaders. Figures like Laura Secord, who famously walked 20 miles to warn British forces of an impending American attack, and Tecumseh, the Shawnee chief who fought alongside the British to defend his people's land, loom large in Canadian memory. A distant echo. The War of 1812 in British memory. In stark contrast to its prominence in North American history, the War of 1812 barely registers as a blip on the radar of British historical consciousness. British textbooks often devote only a few paragraphs, if that, to the war, focusing primarily on its causes and its inconclusive outcome. The war is often remembered, if at all, as a minor distraction from the more pressing matter of containing Napoleon's ambitions and maintaining British dominance in Europe. A world ablaze divergent narratives of World War II. World War II, a conflict of unprecedented scale and devastation, left an indelible mark on the global psyche. But the echoes of this cataclysmic conflict reverberate differently across the globe, shaped by national narratives, cultural memories, and the enduring legacies of victory and defeat. While the broad strokes of the war, the rise of fascism, the horrors of the Holocaust, the Allied victory, are universally acknowledged, the nuances of its telling, the heroes and villains, the triumphs and tragedies, vary dramatically depending on where you stand. Nowhere is this divergence more apparent than in the contrasting narratives of Japan and Russia, two nations forever linked by the war's final act. Japan, forced to confront the dark legacy of its imperial ambitions, grapples with a history often shrouded in silence and selective memory. The rising sun's shadow, a shielded history. After World War II, Japan sought to rebuild and reintegrate into the international community. This process faced challenges, especially in confronting its wartime past. The government's approach to teaching World War II in schools has been controversial. Textbooks often downplay Japanese imperialism, particularly in China and Korea. Through a Soviet lens, liberators of the East. In contrast to Japan's often muted approach to World War II, Russia embraces its wartime narrative with unwavering conviction and national pride. The Great Patriotic War, as it's known in Russia, occupies a sacred space in the national consciousness, a testament to the Soviet people's resilience, sacrifice, and ultimate triumph over fascism. Russian textbooks and popular culture alike celebrate the Red Army's pivotal role in defeating Nazi Germany, highlighting the sheer scale of their sacrifices, the ferocity of their resistance, and their decisive contributions to the Allied victory. However, this narrative of triumph often overshadows the complexities and controversies of the Soviet war experience. The contrasting narratives of World War II in Japan and Russia highlight the enduring power of history to shape national identities, influence foreign relations, and fuel ongoing debates about memory and reconciliation. These divergent perspectives, shaped by wartime experiences, political ideologies, and cultural values, demonstrate the challenges of achieving a shared understanding of the past, even for events of such global significance. It is essential to engage with the diverse perspectives and experiences of the war, to acknowledge both the triumphs and the tragedies, and to recognize the enduring legacies of conflict, resilience, and the human spirit's capacity for both good and evil. Only then can we hope to learn from the mistakes of the past and strive for a future where such horrors are never repeated. The events of September 11, 2001, sent shockwaves across the globe, forever altering the course of the 21st century. The collapse of the Twin Towers, the attack on the Pentagon, the heroic stand of passengers on Flight 93, these images are seared into the collective memory of the world. But beyond the shared horror and grief, the interpretation and understanding of 9/11 vary dramatically depending on where you stand, shaped by national narratives, cultural lenses, and the complex relationship each nation holds with the United States. In the United States, 9/11 is often framed as a watershed moment, a direct assault on American soil that shattered a sense of invulnerability and ushered in an era of heightened security and global engagement. However, this narrative, while deeply resonant within the United States, often clashes with the perspectives of other nations, particularly those with different historical experiences, cultural values, and relationships with the United States. For many Americans, 9/11 remains an open wound, a day of unimaginable loss and trauma that continues to shape their worldview. The attacks are often remembered through a lens of national unity and resilience, with tributes to the first responders who risked their lives to save others, the passengers who fought back against the hijackers, and the countless acts of kindness and compassion that emerged from the ashes of tragedy. The educational approach to 9/11 in the United States often reflects this emphasis on national unity and remembrance. However, critics argue that this narrative, while well-intentioned, often lacks the necessary historical context and nuanced understanding of the complex factors that contributed to the rise of terrorism, particularly in the Middle East. In many parts of the world, particularly in the Middle East, the narrative of September 11th takes on a vastly different tone. While condemning the attacks as acts of terrorism, these nations often emphasize the civilian casualties of the subsequent war on terror, the displacement and suffering caused by military interventions in Afghanistan and Iraq, and the perception of American hypocrisy in its foreign policy. China's perspective on September 11th offers a unique lens through which to view the event's global significance. While expressing condolences and condemning the attacks, China also saw in September 11th an opportunity to advance its own geopolitical interests. The U.S. pivot to the Middle East, driven by the war on terror, created a vacuum in other parts of the world, allowing China to expand its influence in Asia and beyond without facing significant American opposition. Chinese textbooks often portray September 11th as a turning point in international relations, marking the decline of American hegemony and the rise of a multipolar world order. The attacks are often framed as a consequence of U.S. foreign policy, particularly its interventionist approach in the Middle East. This narrative serves to bolster China's own model of development, emphasizing non-interference in other countries' internal affairs and the importance of economic cooperation over military might. As we've explored the diverse perspectives surrounding these pivotal historical events, it becomes clear that history is not a fixed, immutable entity. Instead, it's a kaleidoscope, a constantly shifting pattern of interpretations, shaped by the lenses of culture, nationality, and time. What might be celebrated as a triumphant revolution in one nation's narrative could be remembered as a tragic rebellion in another. A war for independence in one part of the world might be a footnote in another. The way we remember and teach history is not merely an academic exercise, it has profound implications for how we understand ourselves, our place in the world, and our relationships with other nations. It can fuel national pride, but also stoke the flames of historical grievances. It can foster empathy and understanding, but also perpetuate stereotypes and misconceptions. Recognizing the subjective nature of historical narratives is not about dismissing the past or embracing a relativistic view where all truths are equal. It's about acknowledging the complexities of history and engaging with multiple perspectives for a nuanced understanding. By engaging with diverse narratives, we open ourselves to a richer understanding. Our perspectives are but one piece of a larger puzzle. This understanding builds bridges of empathy and fosters dialogue. It promotes peaceful coexistence in an interconnected world. Embracing history's kaleidoscope, we weave a more inclusive tapestry. This tapestry provides a richer understanding of our world. Thank you for watching Tech and Trek, exploring the past powered by the future.